Hello, everybody. Welcome to HoopSocial, the Creator Hour. My name is Ori. I am the social media director for HoopSocial, and I am really glad that you could join us today. We have a great show lined up. We have Rob Moore from BBall Archives, which, if you follow NBA TikTok, you may be very familiar with. And if you're not familiar with, we are hoping to introduce you to somebody new that is worth the follow. So make sure you tune into that. And like always, I like to start with a little tidbit about the day. Today and last night, there was a lot of fun basketball, per usual. Victor Wembanyama did a lot of great things. These guys in this league right now are so tremendously talented, like we've talked about before. Like the parity in the league is so fantastic. It's just so entertaining every single night. And a guy like Wemby at 20 years old doing some of these fantastic things that he's capable of doing. I mean, we called him the extraterrestrial coming into the league because we thought he was an alien. And turns out we were right because he's doing things that just haven't been seen before, haven't been done before, and it's amazing to watch. It really is. The hype train behind him was so big that fulfilling the hype train and superseding the expectations was going to be a very difficult thing to do, and he's done that. So I give a lot of props to Wembyama for that. Also in the league, we have the Lakers trying to make another run. We spoke about them a little bit last week and how I feel that Boston and LA may start to become in the main spotlight again. Boston, obviously, for their whole season's worth of success. The Lakers for coming on strong near the end. We all know that the Lakers made the Western Conference Finals last year, and if they play up to their potential, they're a very dangerous squad. LeBron James just the other night had another 40-point night, 9 of 10 from three, which is just absolutely ridiculous for a player in of his of his caliber at his age. Just to keep doing things that are special and keep doing things that are exciting. I find it to be just super great for the league, and I really have a hard time rooting against LeBron James at this point, despite the fact that I don't think the Lakers are strong enough to really make a ton of noise. But it's neither here nor there. It's fun to watch LA and see LeBron, try his best to still push this team as hard as he can at this age. It's fantastic. I really give a lot of props to him for doing this. And then moving on from there, with we got Vince Carter and Chauncey Billups. Both were announced as being elected to the NBA Hall of Fame or Basketball Hall of Fame. My apologies. It is not the NBA Hall of Fame. We have to make sure that we know that because there is a big difference. So yes, the Basketball Hall of Fame. We have Vince Carter and Chauncey Billups. They're both guys that have had great careers, and they're both guys that have done a lot for the game. So I can definitely see why their cases were compelling enough to make the Hall of Fame. It's definitely tough when you start trying to tally, what actually equals a Hall of Famer. What is the standard? What is the proven standard to determine who is a Hall of Famer? And honestly, we don't have one. And with the era changes and time, things going by, there's certain standards that used to apply that could no longer apply. I was talking to someone and they were discussing how, it's harder to make the Hall of Fame. There's what 147 people in the Hall of Fame. You think about the over 5,000 players that have played in this game. How small a percentage that is that make the Hall of Fame. So it is an extraordinarily exclusive club, even though maybe it seems like they're a little lenient sometimes. It's still a very exclusive club. And every single person in there right now, you could make an argument for. I think that some people obviously have better arguments than others, but you can make an argument for everybody currently in there, in my beliefs. And Vince Carter and Chauncey Billups are in that same category where they can be argued for very easily. And I I don't know. I guess I always thought of them as the borderline guys that were going to be really close, but because of their popularity, maybe it kind of pushes them over the top. Billups really had some great moments. I mean, you figure he had a season where he was top five in the MVP. So like Billups really had a couple really great moments in his career, especially the Finals MVP, the championship in '04. Carter obviously doesn't have the title, but there was a point where he was one of the most popular players on the entire planet, and everybody wanted to jump like Vince Carter. Everybody wanted to dunk like Vince Carter. Like Vince Carter was that guy that really drew a ton of eyes and a ton of attention, and was just super popular. And it's hard to look at his numbers straight up and his accolades straight up and not include the impact of his energy towards the game. Yeah, you have to kind of take it all into consideration: impact, stats, accolades, popularity, just all these pieces you got to put together. And I think if you do that, the cases for Vince and Chauncey can be made. We'll get into that a little later. I want to talk to Rob about his thoughts on them making the Hall of Fame and his thoughts on the Hall of Fame in general. And we're going to try our best to navigate some of this Laker stuff, navigate some of this Wemby stuff, and we'll see how we turn out. So let's do ourselves a favor and bring up our guest. This is Rob Moore from BBall Archives, Baseline Bums podcast. Let's get him up here. Hey Rob, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. Thank you for
Can you hear me
having me,
okay?
Ori. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, my dude. Thank you for having me.
That's great. That's great. I you're a big San Antonio Spurs fan, obviously. I love the background. We don't see a lot of you guys, so naturally, I have to ask, what's the story? Where's the Spurs love and the NBA fandom? Kind of, where's that come from?
Well, my fandom began where a lot of people's fandom began. It began at home. I was born and raised in San Antonio. I was just 10 years old when the Spurs won their first championship, and just seeing how, excited and how electric the city was, all around the sport of basketball, just as a young child was so I was so enthusiastic about that. And my first childhood hero was David Robinson. So that was who I got to see, as a, a 7, 8, 9 year old, going to the games at the Alamo Dome just right down the road. That's what I got to experience, was this beautiful game of basketball that was just team first, pass, pass, pass. And then of course we get Duncan, and then Popovich, creates this wonderful system, and then obviously, you know, the rest is history.
Absolutely. I mean, the San Antonio Spurs have managed to be one of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen. And obviously, you being a fan, I guess people might think that you're a little spoiled.
I
But
I, I do. I think
yeah,
I'm spoiled. I think I'm beyond blessed. My entire life, I have known winning basketball. There has not been a team more winning than the San Antonio Spurs since the late 90s. And that's even when you're counting the most recent handful of seasons where we have just barely been able to stay above the bottom. And this season, we are the bottom.
that's true. It's a very strange spot for them to be in, but
Yeah.
they're not going to be. They're not going to be there long.
No.
So fandom wise, you mentioned obviously the regional thing. Was Were your parents big basketball fans, or family members? Were they big basketball people, or was this something you kind of discovered for yourself as a passion?
Honestly, my parents didn't push it on me at all. Me and my older brother were really tall. We're both about 6'5", 6'6". So it's definitely a sport that you naturally gravitate to when you're tall, you're athletic, and it's like, okay, what am I gonna do, you know, to kind of get some of this energy out of me? And it's like, okay, then this sport makes sense. And I started to play it as I started to watch it and fall in love with the Spurs. And then my game started to blossom kind of as the Spurs were beginning to blossom. I feel like it was kind of this unique growth for both of us, because I got to watch team first basketball happen before me and then kind of incorporate that into my everyday, sort of basketball life, if you will.
So when you were playing basketball, what was kind of the peak for you as a player? And when did you kind of come to the grips that maybe the NBA wasn't in the cards?
Um, oh, that was really, really early on in my career. I saw, I mean, I knew I was good. I'm not gonna lie, I had some really good moments. Like I scored, 56 points in a game in high school. I had like a near triple double in college, and it's like, like I had some really good moments, but I was at a gym with just he wasn't a huge household name, but do you remember Antonio McDaniels?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, Antonio Daniels. Yeah. Uh,
Antonio Daniels, yes. You're
yeah,
Antonio
sorry.
McDyess,
Yeah,
Antonio
yeah.
Daniels.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
I got you.
I did, yeah,
Antonio Daniels, yes.
yeah.
The
Antonio
guard,
Daniels,
yeah.
he was on the Spurs for a few years. But he just came into this gym, this local gym that I was in. I think 11 years old at the time. He was just in sweatpants, just super casual, just came in and was just torching everybody. And there was D1 players at this gym. He was just roasting everyone. And then he took off his sweats and he was wearing a 35-pound weight vest, and
Oh,
you were just like, "Oh, he's just on a different level." Like like to get to that point just felt like astronomical. Like it just felt like, and that was at 11 years old. So I was like, "You know what? I think I'll be good, but I don't think I could ever be that good."
so you got lucky by getting humbled early. It took me a lot longer in life to get humbled, especially being in a smaller state where you think you're better than you are, and then not quite, not quite.
Oh yeah.
AAU will humble you real quick if you're not prepared.
It will. Oh, it certainly will. And that was another thing. I was fortunate to be on a team that went to the nice tournaments, because my coach was RC Buford for 2 years. And so I felt very, very blessed to play alongside of his son, because he gave our team so much attention. He literally just swiped the black card and took the whole team to Vegas, took the whole team to Orlando, took the whole team to all of these crazy tournaments, and we ended up experiencing a lot of really cool things. But at the same time, uh, you know, it's because of RC.
That's super cool. That's those are the kind of stories that stick with you forever. Those memories like that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the great AAU days.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So from basketball player to now basketball content creator, how does that journey start, and how have you found yourself in this position now?
So it was fast forward about 10 years after I'm done playing college basketball. I just really get the itch to want to have those basketball conversations again. You just miss being in those environments where you're consistently talking about the game, and you're really, deep diving certain things rather than just seeing what's on the surface. And so that's where it kind of led me to, like, all right, I want to see what kind of communities are out there, what kind of community I could create. and just see what kind of, new ways I can think about the game because like I said, you're away from the game for a while, you start to get stagnant in how you think about it and I like expanding my viewpoint on various things and there's really no other way to grow as a student of the game than just to consistently consume and to just keep your mind open.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's definitely one of the things that I think true fans are much better at than most too. Is keeping that open mind and being willing to learn as much about the game because it's such an exciting game and there's so much depth. So it's definitely something that um, it's fun to be passionate about for sure.
Oh yeah, there's not only lessons about the sport, but just life lessons itself. And I always think about my high school coach because, and no offense to Stan Leach, but he wasn't that great of a basketball coach, but he was a hell of a motivator. He was a hell of like a just a guy that would bring that fire out in you. And there's a lot to be said about those kind of people that just can really just bring people together. And that's so much of what the sport does.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's one of the best at doing said thing as well, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased because I love this game, but I think it does a really excellent job at it. So I definitely agree there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you got. Oh, I was just going to say sorry. I apologize. I was just going to say. So you have a pretty decent following on TikTok. You got over 22,000 followers. What have you noticed since coming to the app as a content creator? Is some of the best parts of doing what you do?
I would say some of the best parts are the people that surprise you. Like I have done some lives where like I'm legitimately stumped by a question somebody asked during the live. And I'm like, I literally need to stop reading comments so I can think about that in a clearer light because that question was just so nuanced, so well thought out that like I'm like, wow, so that was a genuine stumper. And you know, you don't really think that you're gonna read those in TikTok live comment sections, but every now and then someone drops a gem and you're like, wow, okay. All right, there's some real basketball minds out there. Uh, you just got to be creating the right kind of communities to find them.
100%. I agree because I have met I mean, obviously you included, and some of the guests that I've had, I've met some really interesting, fascinating, super articulate, basketball fans that their passion is, they wear on their sleeves. And that's been really exciting to meet people like that because, all of us live in our bubbles sometimes and kind of think like, geez, I'm this big NBA nerd. How many NBA nerds are really doing this kind of thing and making this kind of content? And TikTok has kind of brought us all together in these communities. And you go, wow, there's actually a lot of us and a lot of people I can learn from.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's all get together and nerd out over true shooting and MVP shares.
Yes, yes, MVP shares all day. I will always fight for that statistic, MVP shares.
Absolutely, my dude. That's why you and I are one of the same.
Right. Absolutely. Cut from the same cloth. I'd agree there. Oh, so well, now being a Spurs fan and being an NBA content creator, I know you have been watching and producing a lot of Wembanyama material.
Yes, this is
What
very
has
accurate.
this Wembanyama yeah, what has this Wembanyama season been like for you as a fan?
Um, I'm gonna preface all this by saying I'm just glad that he has been healthy as much as he has been. We're probably gonna see him play 70 games in his rookie season, maybe even a little bit more, which is kind of crazy to me. I thought maybe we would see 60 tops. Um, but what we've seen from him, aside from all of the lack of team success, is just really astounding. The fact that he's, over 21 points a game, about 11 rebounds. He's leading the league in blocks per game, and it's not even close. He's a full block ahead of Brooke Lopez and Anthony Davis. It's just not even not even a competition at this point. And what's crazy is we're already starting to see the growth. We're already starting to see his advancements in playmaking. He's starting to get more assists per game. Sure, the turnovers are still there, but what we're starting to see is true, genuine growth, improvement from shooting beyond the arc. There's still so much that needs to be worked on, but at the end of the day, I think this is one of the strongest rookie seasons, if not the best rookie season I think I've ever seen from anyone in my lifetime, and that may be saying a lot, but I I honestly I don't know. It's right up there with
You
Duncan for me. It is.
you can make a very compelling argument. I don't think it may come across as a hot take, but I don't think it's a ridiculous take by any stretch of the imagination because there's definitely been something special about what he's been capable of accomplishing in today's game. So there's something to be said about that level of excellence right away and on both sides of the ball. I mean, yeah, this is a great season. It really is, and it's hard to compare it to the Duncan season, obviously, just because of the different eras too. But I think that's the most comparable uh, season is probably that Duncan type of thing, which is just ironic considering it's Spurs.
Right. Well, that is the last time that somebody was a rookie made first team all NBA. So if you were going to go back to the most impressive rookie campaign, it would probably be Duncan. And if you're going statistically bar for bar, man, it's tough to gloss over what Wembanyama's doing because he's just I mean, he's casually putting up prime Hakeem Olajuwon defensive numbers right now. Really, over a steal and a half a game is ridiculous from a 7'4" center. That's just
That's I got it right here. I was reading. I posted today earlier. So over since the All Star break, Wembayama is 23, 12, and 5, 4.4 blocks per game, 1.7 steals per game on 56% true shooting, which obviously we hope goes a little bit higher, and it will. The more comfortable he gets, that true shooting is going to go up. 6.1 stocks a game since the All Star break.
it's
That's
that's nasty. It's just that's 2K numbers. That should be unachievable for a person defensively is what it should be. But what's crazy is that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think that there's a universe where he's getting 2.5 steals and damn near 5 blocks, and we're just like, who is this person?
do
Yeah.
you think that his defensive ceiling is higher than his offensive ceiling?
I think his defensive ceiling is so defined. That's clear right now. Like whether or not he can be the scoring champion, being the points per game leader in the NBA, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that because there's so many guys that can put up over 30 points a game nowadays. But when I look at his defensive numbers and the way he impacts the ball, the way he just makes people redirect their offense, um, his impact is already astronomical as a rookie, and I only see it going up. I haven't really seen anyone else with that amount of defensive presence this early on in their career ever. Like I literally ever. I've never seen it like this. And it's truly remarkable.
His IQ is incredible, and his ability to, you know, recognize where the ball is and even broken plays and plays that, you know, maybe other people might have given up on. He still just takes his chance, goes for it. Like I love his passion. You can tell he's passionate about the game. And that makes you even more excited to see a young guy so passionate and ready to show everybody that he wants to win as soon as possible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that that fire is essential. He understands what's at his doorstep. He understands that he could be touching the tippy top of greatness. I mean, what we've seen from him, he's on trajectory to be one of the goats. Um so whenever we look at it from that viewpoint, uh you got to move accordingly. And I think that gosh, he's made so much improvements already. Because like I see him play against Jokic, last night, and he's able to shut him down in areas where Jokic feels so comfortable, even though Jokic still drops 40 points. Of course he
Sure,
does, but
sure.
a lot of what Jokic had to do was off balance shots where he was throwing it up over Wemby, and if he's not the best player in the world, he's not making that shot. There's pretty much only two players that are consistently doing that over Wemby. That's pretty much been Jokic, Embiid. Everyone else, he's meeting you at the rim and he's blocking you. Even Giannis.
Yeah, that block on Giannis was pretty incredible actually early in the season.
Absolutely. And it's just crazy. He's got this kind of defensive presence at 20 years old. So I think I see him winning defensive player of the year before I see him winning MVP. But I think after this season, it's going to be almost impossible for him to not win it.
That's a fair sentiment. Speaking of, my next question was exactly that. This season, odds are Rudy Gobert is going to win it. But should there be a compelling case be made for Victor Wembanyama considering the stats that he is putting up? Should we ignore some of the San Antonio Spurs woes, so to speak, and just look at like maybe his on-off numbers and kind of see how impactful he is defensively? Because I feel like anybody else has a season like this, and they're probably the sure thing for Depoy. And the only reason he's not is because he's a rookie. Do you feel maybe that way as well?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. The only reason he's not being more strongly considered is the Spurs record and how the Spurs defense has been ranked all year. Because if you were going by how he affects shots, how he affects percentages under 6 feet, how he affects percentages from beyond the arc, which is it's over 15% difference in beyond the arc when Victor Wembanyama is involved on defense, and within 6 feet, I think it's around 11 or 12% difference when Wemby's involved on defense. So the numbers are staggering when he's involved defensively. But has it been translating to wins? And that's what so many people unfortunately look at, because some of this award is tied into team defense. Like, how does your individual defense play into your overall team's defensive scheme? And Wemby has been succeeding on an island, but there really hasn't been a lot of sort of team defense that's been able to exist around him. He hasn't been allowing Vassell to necessarily thrive as a wing defender within their defensive system, and maybe that's some on Pop and some on Wemby's growth. But I think I think that's just a matter of time, getting a couple more defensive-minded veteran players in San Antonio whenever Wemby starts to develop, and I think we're gonna figure it out.
I like it. I like it. Good. The enthusiasm is good. Is very good. uh, Now, if you were the Spurs GM, because I only say this because a lot of people, social medias, the big sports networks, they all are kind of pushing this narrative of Wemby needs to start winning soon. Wemby's so talented. We need to start building around him soon. Let's put all stars around him. Let's not wait to draft around him. Let's do this. Let's do that. What do you think, moving forward, is the best strategy for the Spurs? Should they go after an all star sooner rather than later? Or should they try to develop organically through the draft?
I think it's a little column A, little column B. I don't think that we're necessarily gonna go after a huge big name guard. We're not gonna go sign and trade for Tyrese Maxey or Halliburton or Darius Garland. We're not gonna go after one of these guys that is an all-star or fringe all-star level. I think that we're more likely going to bring in some key veteran players, some guys that are going to bring some experience, some stability to our team, and then we're going to try to draft that point guard. I think that we're really looking for an opportunity creating dynamic, shifty guard. I've seen a couple in this upcoming draft that I would be really excited to get. Nikola Topic is one of the guys that I've really been looking at. His ability to get to the basket, create his own shot. He's a pass first guy. I mean, I he kind of reminds me of Luca in some ways, and I think he would be a perfect fit in San Antonio. So I think it's going to be a combination of both, of using the draft picks that we've secured, not only from DeJounte, but from other trades as well.
So, what about, let me hit you with the crazy one that people have been talking about, that I had the trade machine. What about Trey Young? Any interest in Trey Young? If they could make it work, if you had to give back your picks, your Atlanta picks back to Atlanta for Trey Young, would you do it? Or is he not enough of a needle mover?
I would definitely do it. I think that Trey Young, he gets a lot of hate. I think that there's a lot of comparisons that he gets to Luca because they came out of the same draft. They were, the picks were traded. So there's a lot of unfair comparisons there. He gets some like poor man Steph Curry comparisons. He gets called a shot chucker because he's not the most efficient three-point shooter, even though he gets pressured to take a lot of really difficult shots within that offense. And then, another thing that people always say, they say he's not a really great defender. And I think that, if you put him on an island against somebody bigger and stronger, sure, he can get exposed a little bit, but within a team defensive scheme, he's not that bad of a defender. So I think I could see him coming to San Antonio, getting in a pick and roll situation with Wemby and people not really knowing how to guard that, because if you sag off of Trey, he's going to hit it, but you're going to need to sag off because if not, he's going to lob it up to Wemby, and that's cash.
That's
So
that's I that's what I picture in my head. I something about that combination of the two of them just seems like it makes so much sense on paper. It's like, oh, come on, San Antonio. If you can't find somebody in the draft, maybe see if Atlanta takes their picks back and take a shot at it and see what happens. Because Atlanta, let's just be honest about Atlanta. They're kind of in a position where they're probably looking sooner rather than later to probably rebuild because they just are stuck in mediocrity land.
yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that graphic that was getting thrown around over the last like year or so, and it showed their record over the last like year and a half, and it was exactly 500. It was like perfectly average, just mid, and it was like, yeah, that's them in a nutshell. They're just going to be stuck in that, you know, maybe they're going to make the playoffs, maybe they won't, maybe they'll.
which
But
is the absolute worst place to be stuck in because you figure you'd rather be a lottery team or a contending team. If you're anything in between, your road to success just is going to be that much longer.
oh yeah, that's why people are like, "Hey, you're a Spurs fan. You must be mad about this year." And I'm like, "Well, like, yeah, sure. I wish the guys were playing a little bit better and they weren't, sort of losing every single week. But at the end of the day, the draft is going to be advantageous to us. Like we are going to benefit from being this bad once again. And in the long run, it's going to be a good thing."
Yeah, for sure. Because they have the piece, they have the cornerstone, and that's the important piece. Once you've gotten that, it's so much easier to try to build a team, in my opinion, because you know what you're building around at the very least.
Oh yeah. Well, and when you look at it from this perspective, like all of the teams at the bottom of the barrel, whether you're looking at the Wizards, uh, the the Pistons, you're looking at the Hornets, you're looking at like all these other teams, like the Blazers, all these really bad teams. The Spurs are much better than all these other teams because they have that piece. They have that foundation that you can build on in a very real way, unlike every team I just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's what makes it tough because some of these teams think they got their guy, and then you start to realize soon, like maybe he's not the one.
Yeah.
I mean, not to beat on a dead horse and pick on Atlanta, but Trey Young in that same breath, maybe they're thinking he's not the one. He's not the guy to take him to the promised land. And that is no insult to Trey Young. They've had difficulty building around him, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to give him some lob threats, but like you're gonna need more than Clint Capella and somebody you're gonna need somebody potent down low offensively to do something. And I never thought they got that front court offensive option because if John Collins is the best that you're gonna be able to do from a front court offensive standpoint, then that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's a tough time for Atlanta. To switch gears a little bit, I did want to touch on the Vince Carter, Chauncey Billups making the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to both of them. As NBA fans, we can both appreciate how good both of these guys were, how much fun it was to watch both of these guys, 100%. What are your thoughts on them making it? Is this controversial in your opinion? Is this, a simple choice? What do you think?
I think both of these guys are what I would consider borderline guys. I felt like Chauncey was more of a lock than Vince Carter, but I like to see both of these guys get in there. I think both of these guys are deserving of it. But ultimately, I think fringe guys, like guys that, if you were to leave them off and give me a good reason why, then maybe I wouldn't fight you too much. But at the same time, um, I feel like Chauncey definitely deserves it, and Vince more than likely probably deserves it. Uh, I felt like Chauncey, not only winning the championship, getting the Finals MVP, but you mentioned it earlier in your intro. We're both big fans of MVP shares. He had a season where he finished top 5 in MVP. He had another season where he finished top 6. He had another season where he finished uh, another 10th and 11th place finish, and that's quite a bit more than Vince was able to do. Vince only had one 10th place finish and then had like an 11th and like a 13th, and it never got above 10th. And I think that's a clear indicator of kind of where you are as a player is where you are at your peak, and MVP shares is a decent way of gauging that. Um I also kind of had Chauncey a little bit kind of above Vince because of defense as well. I always viewed Chauncey as a good defender, somebody that had made multiple all defensive teams.
Mhm.
Uh, and that was something that Vince wasn't able to do or uh, ever able to truly excel at, even though Vince was always the better scorer, always was the more fun player to watch. But Vince just didn't have the contributions to winning like Chauncey did, and I always had Chauncey ranked higher ever since both of them retired.
They're very interesting cases. I'm glad that you said that because when I posted and talked about it on TikTok earlier, some of the comments were very anti Chauncey, more than anti Vince, even. Vince seemed like the clear cut guy, and Chauncey seemed more borderline. And honestly, it's their careers are so different that I understand it's hard to try to directly compare just because of what they were bringing to the table. Like you said, Vince Carter was a tremendous scorer, an athlete, and dunker, and Chauncey Billups was more of the steadfast, consistent, hard nosed defender, hit the big shot guy. I think you put it well. Like impact on winning is important. Vince Carter has one of the longest careers we ever seen. How much playoff success does Vince Carter have? Not a lot. Chauncey Billups, on the other hand, was arguably the best player on a championship team. That's a big deal.
And then was able to recreate a lot of success in Denver. People
Yes,
sleep on how potent he was in that Denver offense with young Carmelo, with Kenyon Martin, Nene, all those dudes. That was a dangerous lineup largely because of how Chauncey would orchestrate things.
absolutely, absolutely. Chauncey is just he's another cerebral player, a guy that I think just understands what he's doing at all times and plays at his own pace. One of those type of guys. And we can be honest about that too. Those type of guys don't necessarily get a lot of love because of the supreme athletes, because of the Vince Carters and their popularity. I mean, Chauncey made the All-Star game 5 times. Vince Carter made it 8 times. We know that's a popularity contest. All NBA though, Chauncey made 3 All NBA teams. Vince Carter only made 2. So it's like, it's just strange how their careers are so different from each other. But I would also lean Chauncey as more the surefire guy, and maybe that's crazy, but
No, I am in agreement with you because I think when you factor in Chauncey's got the ring, he's got the finals MVP, he was a better defender, he was consistently ranked higher in MVP voting from year to year. At his peak, he was higher in the league. People viewed him higher. And I got to go back to the year that they played and to the years that they played and how they were viewed within that context. And I don't remember Vince Carter ever doing more than wowing people with his athleticism and his scoring, but people were really genuinely scared of a Chauncey led offense.
yep, this is very true. This is very true. Vince had the flashy moments, but Chauncey had the real moments, for lack
Oh
of a better way
yeah.
of putting it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember watching that 2005 finals where my Spurs were battling, were absolutely battling against that Detroit team, and it was one of the lowest scoring finals in NBA history because there was so much defense. And you know, of course, because Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, but also Chauncey.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Chauncey was that dude. It's I'm very happy to see both of them make it. I will be honest, as a fan of the game, I hold no gripes about anybody that makes it. I'm going to celebrate them either way, but the conversation has to be had. We have to discuss these things because I think people just want to know what is going to be the standards moving forward. Are we going to get too lenient, or is it going to be way harder? Like I said in the monologue, it's difficult to make the Hall of Fame. It really is. People don't realize how difficult it is to make the Basketball Hall of Fame, and we have to appreciate the guys that they let in. And it's it's an exclusive club. It's a very exclusive club.
Absolutely. And I think so many people get lost in the statistics of everything, because if you look at Vince Carter's career and see 16 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and you're like, "Wait a minute, this guy doesn't have a championship. Why is this guy in the Hall of Fame?" Then you would
Mm,
be really, really misled about who he was, the impact he had on not only the culture of the NBA, but just how much respect he had from the people he played against. So I agree wholeheartedly. You got to take everything within context, because if you're just going by one or two things, then you're going to be missing uh, how special some of these players are.
absolutely, absolutely. Now the last segue. Speaking of special, we're gonna get a lot of hate for this. I don't usually talk about too much LeBron James stuff, but we're having a LeBron James conversation now. LeBron James, I have to say, over his last two games, is 23 for 29, 10 for 11 from three in the last two games. He has missed six shots and one three-pointer in his last two games combined. And it just, to me, I bring up those numbers just strictly as like are we seeing like LeBron James 5.0? Like what are we witnessing here?
I think what we're witnessing is um I hate to phrase it like this, but I'm going to when a supernova implodes and it's like the point it becomes the brightest is the point right before it just completely just bursts and just spreads everywhere. So I think that this is just the moment where we're seeing LeBron James kind of give it his all before he's going to call it quits. I think that it's not going to be next season, but maybe the year after. But you're kind of seeing like him give it his all towards the end of the season, um, because he knows, hey, if I'm pushing my team and making the playoffs, this could be the last postseason run I ever have, and I think that that's always in the back of his mind, especially when we're coming down the stretch, several games left. Lakers are in ninth place. The Warriors are nipping at their heels. It's just like, dude, yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do,
Yeah,
man? Yeah.
it's it's I find it crazy just the fact that they have even put themselves in this position to be back in it, because the beginning of the season and for such a long stretch, they seemed very dysfunctional. They seemed like their offseason moves were all blah after we were all hyped about them. And now we're in a position where I feel like Lakerland is getting excited again because they go, hey, we pulled off this run last year. Who's saying we can't do it one more time? Do you think they could do it one more time?
In all honesty, the way the West looks right now, they're in ninth place. So if they were able to get up to eighth, they would have the Nuggets in round one. And I I don't see them I don't see them withstanding the force of the Nuggets right now, the way they're playing. Anthony Davis is playing great basketball, but his knee isn't 100%. LeBron could be in and out of the lineup if there's a tweak or something small. Like you can't just assume he's going to be 100% healthy. He's pretty much listed day to day before every single game. Um, so I think that there is some concern, and I know he's not a huge part of their offense, or a huge part of their team. But if you're going to go up against a team like the Nuggets, you're going to need your front court defense, and they don't have Jared Vanderbilt. He's been hurt for a while, and he's a large part of what they do uh, from a front court defensive standpoint. So I think if they were able to get matched up against a team like Denver, they would be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would be a hard matchup. I definitely wouldn't pick the Lakers in that. Uh, what would you say though if it were OKC or the Clippers or the Timberwolves? Which of those three, if you were the Lakers, would you rather see?
I think if you're the Lakers, you would want to see OKC. I think you would want to see a team that doesn't have the playoff experience from top to the bottom. No one on their team is really going to be able to navigate a 7-game series and understand how to go into a game with certain motivations. LeBron, Anthony Davis, those are guys that have been there, done that. They're going to be able to navigate those moments much more effectively. So if they were to get matched up, as the 8th seed and OKC can work their way back to the 1st seed, I could see that being somewhat favorable for them. Uh,
Hmm.
but if it's the T Wolves, that's just too much front court. I don't think that they're going to be ready to deal with the amount of defense the Timberwolves are putting out. Yeah, I don't see that being a good matchup for them.
That's fair. I could see that too. Minnesota is tenacious. They are tenacious. They've been a fun
Defensively,
watch this year all
yes,
season. Hmm. Well, that's why
absolutely.
Rudy's going to get that depoy. I mean, it's just that you put a rim protector like that, and you finally get some nice perimeter defense, and you get that's a tough piece. You got guys like Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards that are super athletes that have high motors too. So that also helps.
Oh yeah, and you have a smart team defender like Mike Conley. You have smart team defenders like Kyle Anderson who aren't exactly like wow guys. They're not going to blow you out of the water defensively, but they play well within a team system, and it just leads
Mhm.
to great rotations, people always being covered, uh, guys having the freedom to sort of hang out in passing lanes a little bit more often, and yeah, it usually ends in a pretty swarming defense.
Well, it's one of those things that I just I don't know. I get excited about Minnesota because somebody like Ant really pushes the excitement factor to another level because of his motor and his skill. And like the dunks, the blocks, the that block where he hit his head against the backboard was one of the most incredible things that I've ever witnessed in my entire NBA fandom. I'm not gonna lie. I was so hyped by that. I I I really want to see Minnesota do some things. And I feel like Ant is that key component with that defense. Do you think they can make it to the Western Conference Finals?
I think they absolutely can. I think that it's all about health with them. I mean, obviously, uh, they are so dependent on Anthony Edwards and what he produces. But even when Cat isn't fully healthy and ready to go, they're still able to play so well defensively that they're still in these games. So just off that fact alone, that if Anthony Edwards plays well and they have a decent night on defense, that they can beat most teams in the NBA. I think that they can uh easily get to the second round, but I don't see them getting to the finals. I don't view this as a finals team, not yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
And
I, I s-
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I just don't see them really getting past the Nuggets, and that's what it would have to look like. And even in a 7-game series, I think I would take OKC and Uh, I would probably I don't think I would take the Clippers, though. I think that
They've been
I
having this
think
tough stretch.
yeah, but you know what? I mean, there is supposed to be tough stretches, but I thought the tough stretch would be at the beginning, not towards the end of the season. So I think it's just their tough stretch is coming at the wrong time is so disheartening for all of the Clipper Nation fans.
Exactly. That's it. I mean, when you're coming into the playoffs, you want to be hot. You don't want to be the other way around. And I feel like that's kind of sucking the optimism out of the stadium because they're kind of feeling like, uh-oh, we thought we had all this cohesion and all this gelling together, and now all of a sudden we're hitting these struggles. What's going on? So I don't know. I'm concerned about the Clippers for sure. Only a few minutes left. So I wanted to know before I let you go a couple last tidbits. First tidbit, if you had to choose who you think is going to be the NBA Finals matchup, who would you choose and be the most sure about?
um I right now, I think the Nuggets are the most cohesive team, so I don't see why Nuggets don't win back to back. But at the same time, I think it's going to be the Nuggets Celtics in the finals, and I think that the Celtics are going to give them an absolute just hell of a fight. So I think at least a 6 game series, if not seven. But I still think that the way the Nuggets look in a pinch, like, if the game is close, like, I mean, I just saw it last night, like, they were down most of the game, and even if even it was, against my Spurs who were, didn't have Sohan, didn't have Vassell, didn't have Keldon Johnson, um, but still they just kind of flipped a switch and knew how to act in late game situations, and that's what a consistent championship like team does. So whenever I'm looking at how they're still moving, how they're still operating, I gotta view Nuggets at the top of the food chain. But that is only just a little ahead of what I'm seeing from the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, these teams are definitely tough. It feels like a collision course is inevitable, but not in the same way that it was when Cleveland and Golden State kind of felt inevitable. Um, I feel like the Celtics, for whatever reason, have a strange amount of questions surrounding them, considering how good they've been. I've talked about this before, where I feel like they're one of the most dominant teams that's ever had so many questions when it comes to how good they're going to be in the playoffs. Because, I mean, the stats have them in rarefied air when it comes to where they compare to some of the greatest teams to ever have a regular season, greatest regular season teams. And yet we just don't seem to talk about them like that. Is there something like what's the biggest chink in the armor in Boston that you think makes them seem so vulnerable?
I think that there's oftentimes in late game situations in big games where they rely on outside shooting, and there's times where that will shoot you in the foot if you don't realize quickly enough that, hey, I need to get the ball in the paint, get the ball to the basket, get fouled, get to the line. And if you're in a really big game, you can't afford to start off 0 for 6, 0 for 7, 0 for 8 from 3. It's like you can't just keep barking up that tree. It's you got to pivot, and you got to pivot right away. And of course, there's going to be times where you're going to go back to 3-point shooting later on in the game. But I think that's what I've seen the most in games where the Celtics have struggled. They've just they've had 3 guys that have gone like 1 for 8, 1 for 9, like 2 for 7. It's like, well, guys, if you're missing 25 to 33s in a game, then you're probably not going to win that game. And and it's and it just really makes me scratch my head when I look at, Tatum and Brown and Porzingis and all these insane athletes that they have. It's like, why aren't we going to the basket more often? It's like, why aren't you guys making it easier on yourself? And so I would say that, yeah, just move in and take it to the hole a little bit more in late game situations, and I think I think they could win.
Be fine. Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming through. This has been a lot of fun. We're definitely going to have to do this again. Uh, I appreciate your time and this great conversation. Everybody, make sure you follow Rob Moore, BBall Archives. Let us know, Rob, what are some of the best ways to follow you and push some of the stuff that you're putting out there right now?
Absolutely. On TikTok, I am at BBall Archives. I have a podcast at Baseline Bums. Uh, that is on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcast, anywhere, everywhere you get your podcast. Um, I'm also at RLM Productions on Instagram. That's my cinematography company. I'm shooting films in Austin, Texas. So go follow me there. If you need any cinematography work, let me know.
Awesome. Awesome. That is so cool, man. Well, we are glad to have you. Thank you for your time. And everybody, this is Ori from Hoop Social. I appreciate you guys stopping by. This has been a lot of fun. This is Rob Moore from BBall Archives. And I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your night. This is Hoop Social out.